Welcome back to the cryptowrld channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now the price of Bitcoin is still perfectly playing out this fractal, which is very interesting because we have also seen a bit of a sell-off in the short term over in the stock market due to the Federal Reserve beginning quantitative tightening today. All of this will be very important to pay attention to, so I'll be covering it later in this video. Definitely stick around. First of all, giving you a quick update on the monthly Bitcoin charts because as mentioned yesterday, we just saw a monthly candle close, which confirmed the break into the lower half of the RSI indicator on the monthly Bitcoin chart. And we have only ever seen this happen just 3 other times in Bitcoin's entire price history, and all of those 3 other times turned out to be areas of maximum opportunity if you're simply dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin during those stages in the market. And if you want to know more about this chart right here and when we could possibly begin a bullish reversal back to the upside, then definitely check out my last update video that I posted yesterday on the channel. But basically, as of right now, because of the fact that the monthly Bitcoin RSI is currently in the lower half of the indicator, I'm simply dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin. But keep in mind, we could see some lower prices because, for example, on this daily Bitcoin chart, looking at this Bitcoin fractal that we're still playing out, we saw a perfect reversal back to the downside after that pump that we saw over the past few days, which is pretty much exactly what we saw in the middle of last year. Because in case you're new to the channel, these white bars are simply previous price action that I copied from what we saw in the middle of last year, more specifically in around May, June, and July. And in fact, during last year, we saw a crash during May, and then a lot of sideways consolidation for the rest of May leading into June, where we saw a bit of a pump, but we also came back down to meet the original lows that we set during May. And then the Bitcoin price chopped around for a little bit more, had one more retest of the lows, and then we recovered back to the upside. And even if you're looking at the daily Bitcoin RSI, during May, we entered into oversold territories, and the daily RSI has basically been on an uptrend since then, and we briefly entered into the top half of the RSI, so just above 50, and now we're currently seeing a slight pullback in both the daily RSI and the Bitcoin price. And now looking at what happened during the middle of last year, we entered into oversold territories on the daily Bitcoin RSI during May at that massive crash. And then while the Bitcoin price was experiencing a lot of choppy sideways price action for basically the rest of May entering into early June, we saw an uptrend form on the daily Bitcoin RSI, and then we pumped slightly above 50, just above the halfway point in the RSI. And then we saw a pullback in the daily Bitcoin RSI, which also resulted in a further pullback in the Bitcoin price, which once again revisited the original low that we set back during May. And not only that, but if you're zooming out to the 2-day Bitcoin chart, obviously we still have this active bullish divergence right here, and we also saw something very similar on the 2-day Bitcoin chart back during the middle of last year. But it is important to mention that I don't necessarily expect the exact same thing to play out. Instead, I'd expect something similar, just not the exact same, if that makes sense. So basically, in the somewhat shorter term, looking over the next 1 week or so, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bit more of a pullback in the Bitcoin price, as I also mentioned in yesterday's video before this pullback started. But overall, we're potentially in for another 1 month worth of sideways choppy price action, relatively speaking. And of course, another reason why we are experiencing a bit of a pullback today in the Bitcoin price, which I also discussed in yesterday's video before the pullback, was this bearish divergence forming on the 4-hour Bitcoin chart. And once again, as I mentioned yesterday, this just means that this bullish move is losing bullish momentum. Basically, we're gathering more bearish momentum, so we're most likely about to see potentially some choppy sideways price action or potentially a pullback. And obviously, that's played out nicely so far. And at the time of recording this video, the Bitcoin price is clearly trading below 30,700. So as for some other levels of support to pay attention to, obviously we still have important support coming into play at around 28,500. But other than that, looking at the Fibonacci retracement tool from swing low to swing high on this 4-hour chart, we do have the golden pocket coming into play at around 29,500. So basically in this area on the chart at around 28 to 29,000, give or take, there is a lot of buying pressure waiting there, because once again, we have already seen that over the past few weeks. And also, if the price of Bitcoin potentially makes its way back down towards around 29,000, that will bring the 4-hour Bitcoin RSI close towards oversold territories, especially if we do that in all one move. But if we have a bit of a breather in between, then that could reset the RSI. But for now, in terms of the shorter term trend, I am simply more bearish than bullish. But on the macro picture, looking at these macro signals, Technically speaking, we're still in an area of maximum opportunity according to Bitcoin's entire price history. So on the larger timeframes, on the big picture, I am still more bullish than bearish for the long term, talking about potentially over a year from now. Just like what we saw in 2015 and 2020 and also in 2018, we ended up seeing a lot more bullish price action sooner than the next actual bull market because we saw a massive bull run of over 300% profits less than half a year away from the end of the bear market, around a few months away. Now, looking at the US stock market today, this right here is the Nasdaq 100 index on the 4-hour time frame, and the stock market has started off today with a small sell-off, and since then we've seen a small bounce back. So overall, on the daily time frame for the Nasdaq 100 index, we haven't seen a lot of action in the stock market today. But one of the reasons that potentially promoted that small sell-off in the stock market earlier in the trading day, which also spooked crypto prices in the shorter term, was the fact that the Federal Reserve has now begun quantitative tightening. As this article says, starting the 1st of June, the Fed will begin draining that plus $3.3 trillion of bank reserves from its nearly $9 trillion balance sheet to put all of this money into motion, which is a process called quantitative tightening. And I won't go too deep into this, but basically, quantitative tightening is just a fancy name for removing liquidity from the financial system. So basically, removing excess dollars from the system, which is basically the opposite of quantitative easing. And quantitative easing, or QE for short, is just a fancy name for printing money, basically. And that is what we saw happening a lot during 2020 in particular. Because in 2020 and really leading into 2021, we saw a huge expansion of the money supply of US dollars as the Fed was pumping liquidity, pumping dollars into the financial system in order to stop the financial system and the economy from basically crashing. But right now they're doing the opposite of that effect. They're actually causing prices to go down with this quantitative tightening. And the reason why they're forced to do this at the moment is because of inflation. Inflation is obviously at a pretty much 40-year high. And so by doing this, by removing excess dollars from the system, by removing liquidity, you're essentially aiming to bring down prices to combat inflation. But this also has an effect on markets like the stock market, real estate, crypto, all of that. And this also goes hand in hand with rising interest rates. And so it's because of all of that, basically the Federal Reserve's monetary policy, as to why we've been experiencing a lot of bearish price action this year, especially in both the stock market and in crypto. But even when we are seeing bearish price action, we can still make money in crypto. And if you want to know how to do that, check out one of these videos popping up right here on your screen, because both of these videos reveal how you can keep making money in crypto no matter what prices are doing. But anyway, that is it for this update. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.